How's everyone doing today? Thank you, Tiffany, for that wonderful introduction. So, um, so I like to start by saying I'm a member of the spinal cord injury community. I'm a T12 paraplegic. I was injured when I was 17 years old, and life has been, in my case, very wonderful. I'm blessed to have wonderful, great parents who helped give me the foundation, and some of the needs and the ideas on things that I would be able to do even through my recovery process when I was in rehab. Um, a lot of times, individuals who suffer spinal cord injuries, they do not really know any other person with a spinal cord injury at the onset of their injury. So, with that said, I've done some amazing things, I think, throughout my time living with the spinal cord injury. And today, my presentation is going to be on transitioning back to adaptive sports. I felt that that was very important for me to discuss because of the fact that it gave me a sense of purpose. And once I got that sense of purpose, I was able to conquer the world, in my opinion. So I'm going to start with the presentation. As I go through the slides, it starts with the beginning. I'm going to start with the beginning and so on and so on. So without further ado, let me share the screen. All right. So the beginning. So I like to start at the beginning because where I started is not where I'm at now. And I want everybody to come along for the journey. So I was injured at 17. I was a victim of gun violence. With that said, I was in rehab for 11 months. And during my recovery process, I was amongst individuals. I was in pediatrics at the time, and I was amongst individuals who never had the opportunity to walk, never had the opportunity to run or jump. And me losing my ability to do those things because my aspiration at the time was to be a NFL football player, it really changed things and put it into perspective. And then I remember my doctor telling me I could see the glass as either half empty or half full. So it was up to me to choose how I wanted to live my life. When you lose the ability to do some of the things that you often did every day, and you probably oftentimes you took for granted the ability to just brush your teeth or to put on a shirt yourself, it does change things and really put it in perspective. And living with a spinal cord injury, you learn a lot about yourself, you learn a lot about your capabilities, and you also learn about a lot how what other people go through as well, if they depending on their injury level. So you get a sense of sympathy and empathy on both sides. All right. So living with a disability. Living with a disability, it can be difficult. And the reason being is because I've been injured for over 18 years now. And at the beginning of my injury, things wasn't accessible. You would go to different entities, like out to eat, maybe with your loved ones or whatever, and you would encounter stairs and things of that nature, which often would discourage you because you don't want anybody having to carry you up the stairs, and it plays with your independency. So, with that, society create barriers for individuals living with disability. So me being a wheelchair user, I like to tell people all the time that the wheelchair doesn't impose any hardships on me. It's society that imposes the hardships on me. So if everything was accessible, I would have no worries. I could get up in the morning, go about my daily life without even having to map it out, just like most of y'all do. In my case, I have to sometimes, especially early on with my injury, before I had a vehicle, to transport myself, I would have to rely on the subway system. And what many people don't know, and I know y'all had a talk yesterday with Kamel or recently, and this New York City was built around the subway system. And unfortunately, only about 20% of the subways are actually accessible. And 18 years ago was even less than that, because a lot of times you would encounter, you go to a train station, elevator is not working. So you have to get off at another stop. So the key to life, well, one of the keys to life is being on time. So if you have to go to school or work, how are you going to get there on time if the elevators are out of service? And that's something you're depending on and you're relying on. Also, there was other means of transportation like accessoride and so on and so on. The thing with me personally with accessoride, I didn't like accessoride because I felt like I was dependent on a driver to take me all around the world. And I'm a young guy at the time. I wanted to just hop on a subway like anyone else, like my friends or anybody. I wanted to have that luxury and that opportunity, to be in control of me getting to my destinations on my own. Um, However, living with disability, you do learn a lot. You learn a lot about other disabilities, and you learn how to adapt. And I think that's one of the skills that all individuals living with disabilities have, is that they are able to adapt to, you know, different circumstances. So for instance, during the pandemic, when a lot of people was at home, a lot of people, had to adjust and learn how to work from home. When individuals that have disability, we was already working from home. So it wasn't a major adjustment for us. It was more of just, us going on with our daily lives because we're used to it. We're used to change. And that's one of the things that, become our skills. We are able to pivot and divert and do different things or find a way to do the same thing just in a different way, which is very important. So setbacks. So living with a disability, you're going to encounter setbacks, especially when you have a spinal cord injury. So one of the things, so people often see a person that's using a wheelchair and they may think the general public may think their legs, they have some type of impairment with their legs, but a lot of times spinal cord injury does come with other impairments as well. Things like neurological things such as like bladder, bowel function, and things of that nature. And you're more prone and more acceptable to, certain types of infections just because, you're doing a lot of different types of ways to, there's a lot of different types of ways you have to, insert stuff into your body, depending on your injury level. It looks different for person to person, but setbacks do happen. Setbacks happen as well as, in my time, there was a lot of discrimination, but it wasn't just straight out discrimination. It was covered up. So like you would go on a job interview and you have all the qualities, you completed all, the requirements, and you feel as if, you're worthy of that job. And then, you'll get there, they'll look at you, they'll say they're going to call you back, and they may never call. And because they just assuming that you wouldn't be unable to carry out those particular job duties due to your disability, which in many cases, the disability does not hold a person back. A person adapts to live with their disability. So they figure it out. So the journey, so how I got to where I'm at now, especially in the adaptive sports world, was I started out by just going to the gym. I just wanted to be healthy. I wanted to get stronger. And, you know, it's just a sense of releasing endorphins, the stress, things of that nature. So, and then, there's this old saying that you miss every shot that you don't take. So me, I was just randomly in the gym one day and, working out, and a gentleman comes up to me and says, yo, you're really strong. Have you ever considered playing any adaptive sports? And at the time, I seen adaptive sports, but I wasn't too abreast to where to go and play it at, or like where the adaptive sports teams are. But you always heard, like I heard about the Paralympics and things of that nature growing up, but you don't know like how to get affiliated, how to get in, or where they're going to see me compete, or where are the local teams and things of that nature. So this gentleman happened to be a part of an organization called the Wheelchair Sports Federation, and he invited me out to a wheelchair football game. Now, at that time, I was doing, other things. Like I was starting to get involved in like modeling, motivational speaking, and stuff of that nature. But when he offered me that opportunity to come out to just see what it was, he said, you don't have to participate. You could just see and observe. And if you want, you could get in. So I went out and I seen all of these incredible individuals, out there working hard and being competitive. And me being a former football player, that was a big part, and football was a big part of my life. I wanted to get back into, competing because it's just something that I love to do. So with that said, I went out to the wheelchair football practice. A gentleman by the name of John Hammer comes up to me. He's the director of the Wheelchair Sports Federation. And he says, one day you could be a Paralympic athlete. And I said, Paralympic athlete, that's pretty high, because right now we're just at a recreational football game. And I know people train their whole lives to achieve that goal. So with that said, he connected me with a gentleman at the Armory, where people do track and field. And the gentleman there was supposed to start coaching me in field sports. And I used to go to the Armory. It was like, most of the time it was during the winter. I would go to the Armory. I take the subway. If the subway, I get to the station, because I believe it's in Washington Heights. So I would get to the station, and sometimes the elevator will be out of service. I have to get off the next exit. It could be raining or snowing or whatever. I'll just get off the next exit, roll back down the hill, and I'll go to the Armory, and the coach wouldn't be there. So I went back to the gentleman, John Hammer. I'm like, why would you set me up with someone that wouldn't be consistent or dedicated to helping me achieve my athletic aspirations? So he said, things happen. I'll do you one better. He connected me with the New Jersey Navigators, which is a junior Paralympic wheelchair sports club. And they train in track and field. So the first time I went to a New Jersey Navigators practice, which was in Bayonne, New Jersey, being that I had a car at the time, I was able to get there on my own. The coach, Jim Cuevas, started pointing at his athletes that were currently there. He's like, oh, that guy won a gold medal in Rio and made $30,000 off the gold medal. This one right here, he does shot put and tennis, and he won a tennis cup where he made $10,000. And me being from New York City, I'm like, that's some real money right there. Sign me up. What I got to do? And that's how I got my introduction into wheelchair. I started out wheelchair racing, and that was somewhere around 2017. And then from wheelchair racing, it led me into doing shot put, discus, and javelin. And then from shot put, discus, and javelin, my coach asked me one day, how much did I weigh? I told him about 120 pounds. And he says, I'm going to enter you in a para powerlifting competition. So, sorry about that. So I'm going to enter you in a para powerlifting competition. And once he entered me in that competition at 120 pounds, I was able to lift 250 pounds. And then Team USA came calling. So acceptance. So it took me a while to accept my injury for various reasons. But I was going through life. I was still, going through my daily living routines. At that point, I already had graduated from college. I had my bachelor's in finance. Then around that same time, I was working a little bit for the Internal Revenue Service for a little while. But I wasn't around individuals with disabilities, like pretty much for like 6 to 7 years, like after my injury. So, and that was because I was still in the phase of, not accepting it. I still was thinking like, wait, one day I'm gonna get up out this chair and just walk. But once I got around different athletes, and, they started telling me about all the incredible things they have done, all the places they have traveled, that's when I began to accept my injury, because I realized that, this opportunity that I was given, everything happens for a reason. And maybe this was my calling, to be more of a Muhammad Ali versus like a Michael Jordan, and to raise social awareness to individuals out there living with disabilities. So and then this another saying I live by. I always live by, like, when it's your time, God makes you skip the line. So I didn't have to go through some of, the challenges that other athletes that been trying to compete to make a national team, to make Team USA, to go to a world championship. I kind of skipped all of that, being that I was already ready by priming myself, by going to the gym, and there's a lot of things I did in the background that helped me get to the point where Team USA could reach out to me. So representing Team USA. So currently ranked 16th in the world. My goal is to make it to the top 8 by July 2024, because the Paralympic Games start at the end of August of 2024, which will be taking place in Paris. So here in this picture, I was the flag bearer. This was the last World Championship that I recently competed at in Dubai. In that competition, I believe I finished 8th in the world, well, 9th in the world, but that doesn't consider all the other athletes that wasn't there. So with that said, I got my ranking up to 16th overall in the world, but at this competition, I finished around 8th. Other than that, but like I traveled to Manchester, United Kingdom, to Tbilisi, Georgia. Where else? Where else? Veracruz, Mexico. Almost every state in the United States. I've been training at the I trained at the Olympic training facility quite a few times. I've seen athletes like Simone Biles in my, previous times at the Olympic training facility in Colorado Springs. I've seen the dorm where all the swimmers stay at, such as like Michael Phelps and athletes like that. I met Terrence Crawford, the boxer, Shakur Stevenson, another world famous boxer. And just having the opportunity to represent Team USA, being a person of color and being able to hold the flag, that's a tremendous accomplishment for me. And it's a lot of respect, because if I look back at where I started, I would never have fathomed that I would be doing some of the things that I'm doing now. And, it's all because I never gave up. Essentially, I was always open to opportunities. And, that's one of the things I try to, let individuals know who that I work with here at Mount Sinai is that the world is yours. You just got to find something that you're passionate about, and it could take you to places that you would have never imagined. And me being passionate about lifting weights and being passionate about athletics, it's taken me around the world, which even if I was an able-bodied individual, that opportunity might not would have been realized. So go a little further. So what I like to tell people is what the world should know. What the world should know is that individuals with disabilities have incredible capabilities. Individual disabilities, you can learn from individuals. We all have different capabilities, but we all have ways of adapting. And the world should know that if we create a more inclusive environment and more accessible environment and more representation, then we will have a better world. We will be able to brainstorm and come up with better ideas in order to make everyone's lives better. So my future plans, my ultimate goal in life is to win a Nobel Peace Prize. I feel like at one point I had a goal of being the mayor of New York City, but I felt like that's too easy. I'm way too popular for that. So that's, so I always try to set my goals high. Pretty much if you aim for the stars, you can fall on the clouds. So, but my goal is to win a Paralympic gold medal in powerlifting. Currently, I bench press around 320 pounds, weighing about 135 pounds. I'm the strongest in the country by far, able-bodied or disabled, and in my weight class. And yeah, my ultimate goal is to win a Nobel Peace Prize. Being from Brooklyn, that's something that, I could pride myself on because there's not too much Brooklynites there's not any Brooklynites that I know of that ever won a Nobel Peace Prize. So, and I think that shows the significance of, what I'm trying to achieve, in life. I want to make everybody's lives better in some form of fashion. And what I'll do now is open the floor up for some questions. Let me just figure out how to stop the share. Did that work? New share, stop share, got it. All right. Yeah. So now we can open up the floor for some questions. I'm more of a person, like if you ask me a specific question, then, I could go into details more or elaborate more on anything I said previously.
Thank you, Garrison. So I always have questions. You know that by now about me. So my question, so you don't want to become the mayor of New York City. You want to get a Nobel Peace Prize. What would it be in?
Something humanitarian, I just want to better the lives of individuals living with spinal cord injuries across the world. And that's currently what I'm doing. If anybody check out my Instagram under Garrison Red, you'll see that I'm pretty big in influencing the community and making other people, especially able-bodied people, aware of our capabilities.
Okay. And for those who just joined, I did put the TED Talk in your TED Talk in the chat, but I will post it again so everyone can see it because you do talk a lot about opportunities. What are some of the opportunities that we can make available here at Sinai? Because again, that was a big focus on today as well as in your TED Talk. So what can we do here?
Well, I think Mount Sinai can, support our Life Challenge program. So one of the things is we have a Life Challenge program, which I oversee, where we take individuals that's newly injured out skiing, skydiving, water skiing. There's this new organization called Just Hands Racing, where we take them in race cars. Also willing to volunteer. It's always good to volunteer. So we collaborate with the organization, the Wheelchair Sports Federation. They actually have a wheelchair football game this Saturday, Jets vs. Giants, their annual game. But they also run a lot of other sports around the city, such as adaptive basketball, adaptive softball. And really, if individuals come out, volunteer, I think that would be, tremendous because it gives other individuals, especially able-bodied individuals, opportunity to socialize with individuals with disabilities and to brainstorm ideas on how we could make, Mount Sinai more inclusive and more accessible. Because a lot of time, another thing is a lot of people are looking for jobs and they don't know how to get into the workforce, or they feel as if, the workforce is like not designed for them to enter. And that's totally not true. There's things such as reasonable accommodations. One of the things that I would like from Mount Sinai to do is to have somewhat of like an accessibility job fair where employers would, we have a job fair with employers that are open to hiring individuals with disabilities. So they could provide them with the steps that they would need to take in order to attain employment. So, those are just some of the initial things that I think that are doable and foreseeable in the future.
Thank you. And so we want to open the floor up again. If you have any questions, please come off of mute, put them in the chat. Yeah, join this conversation.
Is there anywhere we can go to see like a list of upcoming events or just be up to date with the future events?
Okay, so one of the things you can do is, after the conclusion, you can email me and I can add you to our mailing list. So we have a specific directory for our spinal cord injury department. And I send out events daily. So like, for instance, I sent out upcoming events as of coming up next week for Halloween. We have a few events going on, such as we're going to go to a haunted house that's taking place at the Oculus. Also, we're going to do some pumpkin picking. So, those are just some of the events. And on our newsletter, we have all of our upcoming events. So our sporting events that we have and things of that nature as well. So it has everything that we're doing for the spinal cord injury community here in New York City on our newsletter. So just by shooting me an email, I'll send you my email address right now. I'll type it in the chat. I'll add you to our directory, and you can also follow us on Instagram. It's Mount Sinai SCI, which I dropped in the chat as well.
Thank you.
Yep.
Garrison, can you tell us a little bit more about the work that you're doing here in Sinai as well as outside? Because you do so much.
So the work I do at Sinai is, I try to help individuals transition from, the onset of their injury to getting back into the outside world. Unfortunately, a lot of times their stay isn't long enough so that they won't have the time. A lot of times they don't have the time to be fully independent, but they do have the foundation. So that way, when they go home and continue their therapies, they do know that there's a possibility that one day they might have independency depending on their injury level, which will look different from person to person. But with that, communication, I try to teach individuals how to communicate. I teach individuals how to use their wheelchair, as well as everything in between, such as there's some emotional days where an individual might not, be up to it. So I'm there for the encouragement as well. And we have peer mentorship programs. So I try to pair the individual that's newly injured with somebody that's a little more experienced with the same injury level and qualities or interests because that's one of the main things. It's best to learn from someone. When it comes to a spinal cord injury, doctors and nurses, they'll tell you one thing, but if you learn directly from the individual and therapists, but if you learn directly from an individual that has been through what you've been through, you could resonate a little more. Mm-hmm. I also run a gun violence support group, because there's a lot of individuals in New York City that suffered their spinal cord injury due to gun violence. And, that's like a specific group for that particular demographic. We also have a transition group that I co-host with Dr. Riccobono. She's our neuropsychologist on the unit. And I have run a peer support group also as well on Fridays. And that peer support group is usually leisure. We just hop on, talk about our week or whatever issues that we're having. And it's a safe space. So there's certain things that an individual may not want to discuss with a person that's with an able-bodied person. They might want to specifically discuss these issues with a person that will understand or has been through what they've been through. And then outside, I do tons of things. So besides training, with modeling, I work with various organizations now on not only modeling, but curating adaptive clothing. I help Google with the Google Nest device. That's a voice activated device similar to Alexa, where it's hands-free. So I have videos on that. I've been in a couple of Google commercials as well, and McDonald's commercials. I help Apple with their roll feature on their watch. You name it. But yeah, my main thing was just showing people that life goes on. And, most people don't see me for, as a person in a chair. They just see me as a person. And I think that's, was my greatest fulfillment in life. People just seeing me as a person. They see me for my abilities. People come up to me in the gym, like, how you get so strong? Like, they never ask me about the wheelchair, really. They always ask me, things outside normal. And my conversations are typically normal, like a person-to-person conversation. But then there are instances where an individual might, come up to me and be like, oh, my brother, he suffered a spinal cord injury. He won't come out the house. And then they might connect me with him, or he might show them my page, and it might change their aspect on what life could look like.
Thank you. So one thing you didn't mention, and I'm going to bring it up because I hold children with disabilities very close to my heart. Can you talk about your book, Bobby's Adventures?
Okay, so my Bobby's Adventures series, the reason why I started writing children's books is because during the pandemic, we was all at home and we was bored, but had noticed a problem. I just going back in life, thinking about the schools that I went to, I'm looking around, I'm like, none of the schools I went to were accessible. All of them had stairs. Every public school I went to had stairs. So, and my mindset was, what occurred was I did a talk like right before the pandemic started, where I went to school and they had to carry me up the stairs because it wasn't accessible to do a talk. And I said, wait a minute, what if there's a child that lived right across the street with a disability? You mean to tell me they would have to take a bus to wherever outside of their neighborhood in order to go to school? And for a public school, I felt that we needed change. There's change that needs to be done. I think every school should be accessible for a person with disabilities. I feel as if it's discrimination, being that a person can't go to the school right across the street from them because they don't want to make it accessible. So that inspired me to write the Bobby's Adventure series, because I feel like representation matters. So there's a little boy or little girl out there that has a disability, and they read in all of these children's books, but none of the characters look like them. And it's time for, change where a character could look like you. And you being, you having a mobility issue, whatever your disability is, should not make you feel any kind of way, because everybody's different in this world, and that's just what makes you unique. So that was the start. So my first book was Bobby's Adventure at a New School, and then subsequently I decided to write Bobby's Adventure at Amusement Park, because that's one of the things that kids really look into. They want to go to amusement parks, they want to have fun with their friends and stuff like that, and they don't want to be excluded. And if we create inclusion from a young age, then it just makes the world a better place overall.
Thank you. Thank you. And where can people find your books?
All right, my books are on Amazon. But if you could just type in Garrison Red, everything comes up. Anything that I'm doing and or whatever. But yeah, Amazon, Garrison Red. Also, I run a nonprofit called the Garrison Red Project as well, which help individuals with all disabilities. So, you can find the book on there. I have links on there as well. So, yep.
Garrison, how do you do all of this? That's my question. How do you do all of this? And
I
how
make
do
it
you balance your personal life?
I mean, I make it happen,
Mhm.
I spend if it's all about balance and scheduling. So like I might do something for an hour here, an hour there. It's all about how you arrange your time. And I like to arrange my time where I'm being productive. I think the more productive I am, that helps too. I have down days. So if I'm always going, then I can't really look at like, oh, I don't have time to sit and be depressed, or I don't have time to, think about my injury and stuff like that because I kept myself so busy. And one of the things I remember when I wasn't busy, that was probably when I was at my lowest point because I had nothing to do but to think. And sometimes you get lost in your mind. So with that said, I spend 2 hours at the gym, maybe. I come here to Mount Sinai every day for about 7 hours, 6 to 7 hours typically. And then and then on my off time, I still hang out. I go to clubs. I do everything that everyone else does as well. So you just find balance in your life.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I see Jason came off mute.
All
Oh
right.
yeah. Oh, I just, a statement first. I just applaud you on a lot of levels. It's just I personally, I'm active, I work out, do my thing, but I often tell, my son, I speak to him and try to give him a perspective, and I tell him, I say, you know, you have things that other people don't have, and you should utilize them. Like don't just don't just allow yourself to live this sedative lifestyle, like just sitting down doing this on the computer. Get out and utilize your body, because not a lot
Yeah.
of people are blessed as you are. And I try to keep that perspective for myself as well. So that's just something I wanted to say. I applaud you on a lot of levels, because I can't lift what you lift, brother. Um, but also the other thing is the mental health aspect of this, and because I think during COVID it must have been, I don't even know how it is for people that are disabled in these areas, because there are a lot of levels to this, right? We
Yep.
have the mental health, which you
Yep.
just literally spoke about, which is people that are physically quote unquote able are not mentally able.
Yeah.
They get lost in their head very, very frequently. And
Yep.
with these things,
Oh, it's easy. It's easy to sit 3 hours go by and you didn't do anything except
you
scroll
didn't do
down a
any
feed. Yeah.
exactly. And I think that part, I think, is the strongest part that you mentioned in your
Yeah.
conversation. And what really, like, what do you notice? Do you notice any patterns when you see people starting to break out of that kind of like mental, like, blur that they're in? Do you notice
Yeah.
anything in
So
particular that sparks them?
Yeah, so one of the things is like initially with their injury, they are unaware of their capabilities. So a lot of times, I'm just speaking about people with disabilities, specifically spinal cord injury individuals. So in the beginning, a lot of times you're living in your head because you think this is a blur. So you lose everything so quickly and you think you could gain it back just as quick. And one of the things I try to explain to them that it's more of a marathon than a sprint. But if you live in your head and focus on the big win, because that big win might never come, you might never run again. But the small wins, being able to brush your teeth, being able to put your clothes on independently, you have to applaud yourself for that, and you have to, and a lot of times people aren't grateful of that, just being able to do that much. And one of the things with me, what occurred was me being in pediatrics when I got injured, these individuals here were smiling, and I was around individuals who had stage 4 terminal cancer as a kid, like 15, or double amputees and things of that nature. And you're like, if this kid is happy, walking on his hands, what I got to be mad about? And that changed my perspective. It helps me change my perspective, even on down days. And then there's a study that shows that severe depression is worse than being a quadriplegic. And if you put that into context, and a person that's a quadriplegic, they lost the ability to use 4 limbs, which is really difficult. And I always said, you know what, I can't fall into that funk. So every time I fall into that funk, I try to find a way to get out of it, whether it's going to the gym, whether it's reading, listening to music. You find different things that work for you. And once you find those things that work for you, you do those things that work for you. You try not to complicate life. I simplify life. So my routine is simple. Like every day I try to do the same thing, and just make small changes. So maybe today writing a chapter to a book, and then tomorrow I might write a speech, write a few words to a speech, but everything is routine. I'm occupied.
Can I and this is something that I have in the future I have in mind. I'm gonna tag you up via email. For Black History Month, I would like to have a panel of Black men, and I want them to discuss exactly what you're doing right now, which is the things you do, right? Your basics. You're getting up in the morning. How, what are you doing? You're doing coffee first. You're doing, what are you doing? Are you stretching first? Other people, I know guys that wake up in the morning, they just smoke a cigarette and just jump on a computer. Like, I don't know how they do it.
I don't know how they do that.
Yeah. I'm just keeping in the buck with you. But there's cats out there like that. But I want to form a panel of Black men that could speak about their day-to-day interactions and things they do to keep themselves sharp, keep themselves on point, and the mental health aspect of it. You know what I mean? I really want them to address that what do they do to keep their mind sharp more than anything else. So if you would, it's something, I mean,
we'll
obviously
connect.
it's further out, but we're gonna
we'll
build
connect,
on this.
definitely. I'm always willing to share my ideas on on mental health. I think mental health is very important. And my mom being a psychologist, that was what she drilled into me initially. Like, you can't live inside your head, because if you live inside your head, you're gonna get stuck there, because your mind is gonna race and tell you things that you shouldn't, things that you don't need to hear. Your mind tells you most of the things. Your mind tells you what you're incapable of doing, So with that, once that doubt comes into your mind, you have to work on it. It's hard to get that doubt out of your mind once it's in there. So I try not to live in my head. I try not to doubt myself. I try to go for it. Because a lot of times in life, I feel like most people don't even try. They don't even give themselves that opportunity to try something. And trying new things, to me, is what got me. Like, if it doesn't work for you, it doesn't work for you, but you tried it. And that's one of the things that I try to achieve. I try to do new things. I try to learn new things in order to see, maybe I might be great at this or not be great at this, but you got to give yourself that opportunity.
Dope. I think I love the part you mentioned about doubt too. Doubt, it happens to all of us. That doubt, the fear creeps in, and then you just kind of,
I'm not going to do it. I'm not smart enough, even with writing the book. Like, some people say that I might not be smart enough. I might not be, how could I write a book? And I'm like, with me, I'm like, I'm from the hood. I'm from Brownsville, Brooklyn. So I'm like,
I'm in Bed-Stuy. I don't know. By the way, I don't know how you're going to do this. Go for the Nobel Peace Prize coming from Brooklyn, bro. I mean, good luck.
I'm gonna get the kids. Influence them, because they tend to listen to me. So,
that's good, man. That's dope.
One day at a time.
That's what's up. No, I appreciate you, man. And like I said, I'm about to tag you via email. So
definitely
we'll touch base on this event for sure.
All right. Yeah.
Appreciate
I'm all for it.
Yes, sir.
And I think this is a good opportunity. I love the connection that was just made there, and I love the conversation and that was happening. But I think this is a good opportunity to share some of the things that is happening around the system. Like Jason, for example, I'm gonna call you a lead because you're a lead. He's one of our leads for our diversity councils, and we have a few people on the call that participate in our ERGs and our diversity councils. But I think just having those connections right there and making that connection is how you really see change throughout the system. So if anybody want to come off mute and just tell what they're doing around the system, because again, that's really how we create change through that.
Yes,
So
yes.
I do appreciate that. I will say we do have an Adapt ERG here, and we encourage everyone to join. We should be seeing more events coming out in 2024 from Adapt, but definitely learn about your ERGs, learn how you can get involved, learn how you can be a part of the change that is happening here in our system. So that's my little spiel.
All right.
So feel free to come off mute and let's continue to have this conversation. Any other questions for Garrison? Right.
Tiffany, I just want to note that we do have some comments in the chat. So Garrison, if you haven't looked at the chat, people are singing your praises.
Yep.
And really wishing you well on your
Thank
journey to not only get the Nobel Prize, but all that you're doing, because you really are doing amazing work in the community and also here at Mount Sinai. So thank you.
Thank you.
And I'll read one from Lisa, and she's a part of our ODI team. And she had to jump off. She said she had to step out, but super empowering, and thank you for all that you do. She enjoyed how you made the connection from feeling a bit excluded in other fields, such as job interviews and transportation, but finding more belonging in the adaptive sports community. It's really great to meet others who understand the struggle and learn from their adaptive ways. She said, thank you for sharing, and she wished you all the best in your Nobel. So again, yes. And one of the themes that is emerging through all of our sessions for Disability Awareness Month is belonging. So can you talk about, really quick before we run out of time, your journey to finding belonging?
Well, I'm be honest with you. I found belonging instantly. Being that I was open to finding belonging. Right after I got injured, so my mom was always tough on me. So right after I got injured, she said, you're gonna go through rehab and all of that. And my goal for you, of course, I want you to, hopefully you'll be able to walk, but if not, I want you to live independent. And she said, after I got a rehab, I graduated high school, then left rehab. She was like, you have 6 months to find a job or go to school, like anyone else would have. And when I went to school, I realized that when I went to school, my mother also instilled in me, you dress how you feel. So being that if you feel good about yourself, people are going to gravitate towards you. And, if you if you present yourself well, you shouldn't have any issues with finding belonging. And she was right. As soon as I went to school, I became the cool kid on campus. I went from a 3.8 GPA my first semester to 1.7 GPA my second semester because my friends was taking me to clubs. And I met all of these are new friends. And they're like, no, we're going to the clubs with you because you're going to skip the line. The girls like you, the chair, you're the man. And then that's when I found belonging. It helped my self-confidence. It helped my self-esteem. And my outlook on life was totally different after I went to school. It was like, all right, I could do this because prior to me going to school, I had just graduated high school, but I graduated high school in the hospital. But when I was in public school, I didn't see anybody in a chair or that had a disability that I knew about. At least it wasn't visible. So I didn't know. I was new to the world. And me going to college, it was like, wow, like I'm the only one here that's disabled, which I really wasn't. But I just wanted to, and then it helped with my popularity. So like, I just became popular. I was known as like, oh, that's Garrison, he used the chair, but nobody ever used it. Like the chair and my name never was in the same sentence. People just called me Garrison and they treated me as anyone else. And that's when I realized that, the world is open to inclusivity. They just need to be educated about it. And that's kind of what helped me find belonging, but I still didn't have like full acceptance yet because I was still new early on into my injury. So, but over time, then once I made like Team USA, then I'm like, I accept it. This is probably what my faith, I don't write the book. Somebody else write the book for you, and you just live in it. And yeah. So I guess that's when I found belonging. It was back in like college, and of course I got the GPA way back up because they wasn't playing that academic probation thing. But yeah, that's how I found belonging though, by getting out in the world, going places, and just getting back to like doing social activities.
Mm-hmm. So is that why you started the clothing line? Was that the
clothing line was a combination of things. So one was when I was modeling, I would model, of course, regular brands. However, then other brands started reaching out to me, like Tommy Adaptive. And the thing with me with adaptive clothing, it wasn't swag. Like, it's not something that I want to wear. Like, I ordinarily would not wear that if I was walking around. So, I've sat on a panel with like the CFDA. They the ones that does a lot of stuff in the fashion world, like approvals and stuff. And it was representatives from Tom Ford, Louis Vuitton there. And I'm like, if y'all want to do some adaptive clothing, you got to make it fashionable, where it should be universally designed, where an able-bodied person will want to wear it and has functionality that's adaptive for individuals with disabilities. So if we start there, then I think, fashion would be better. So then I was like, you know what? I'm a person, a go-getter and a doer. So I'm like, I could do this myself. Like, I could design the jeans. I got friends that are tailors or into the fashion industry. And I just go to them, give them a template. They'll produce it. Then I figure it out from there. Like, right now I got jeans in production in China. I wanted to produce them in America, but just to the cost. So for cost efficiency, I started with China. But the jeans that I design have functionality for people with disabilities, but it's not sold as a adaptive garment. It's just sold as a regular jean. And that's one of the things I try to emphasize even throughout this conversation, is that we can't separate it. We got to make it inclusive so everybody could wear it. So if you make adaptive clothing just for one demographic that only one demographic could buy, then that's the only demographic that be wearing it. So of course they're going to be off. It's going to look different when we just want to wear the regular clothes, the same clothes that anybody else is wearing. And then I thought about one of my friends. So when I was in rehab, I had a roommate who had a higher level injury than mine. I think he was like a C4 quadriplegic. And I was like, man, all he needs is magnets instead of buttons in order to fasten his shirt. And he will be able to put that shirt on by himself. Or even with jeans, like sometimes jeans. All right, Jason, sometimes jeans are slim fit. So maybe if there was just a zipper to open the jean, and then he could just pull his zipper down, and the jean is going back to, a slim fit jean. So it was just those things that, I wanted to help. I identified a problem and a need, and I wanted to be the person to create some change, or one of the people to create change in that aspect as well.
You know what, Garrison, you said something, and I don't think we have time to get into it. You said instead of having everything separate, we need to bring it together. And yes. I know we don't have time to dig deep into this next question I'm gonna ask you, but I'm gonna ask it anyway, and we can continue the conversation. So I've noticed that there are a lot of schools, right? This is hot topic, and this might be controversial, and I apologize. But there are a lot of schools that are separating, right? They're not necessarily making public schools more accessible. There are more specialized schools for people with disabilities. Do you think we're doing a disservice, or what? How do you feel about
I feel that's a disservice. I'm gonna tell you why that's a disservice, because I actually have experience with this. So when I went to college, there's regular advisors and then there's disability advisors. The disability advisor wanted to tell me that maybe I might need extra time testing. So, those little things. And I'm like, extra time testing? I have no, intellectual issues whatsoever. I have a physical, disability. And she's like, oh, well, maybe, with the extra time, whatever. And I'm like, I don't understand what you're saying to me, because of the fact that I have no, cognitive issues or none of that. Like, I just can't walk as far, essentially. So why would I have to take a test in a separate room? That doesn't make any sense to me. Then also the disability advisors would try to have me take 4 classes, and I wanted to take 6 to 8 classes per semester. I'm like, I could take all the classes within my curriculum because it's all the same language. Why would I take the 4 classes you're assigning me when I could take more than that? So I know that on the college level. So even on the schools, in the school system, a lot of times from what people have told me is that they will group them with somebody with, you know, an individual with an intellectual disability. So now you're in a classroom that's pretty much segregated, or in a school that's segregated from, you know, the actual main school, which is totally unfair. So, you know, that's something that needs to change. But I think that starts with, first it starts with the person. So like the person or the family members, you know, advocating like, no, my child can go to the same school as anyone else. There's no reason why they should be separated. You know, it starts there. And then, you know, sometimes you got to lobby. Sometimes you got to be the one to go, you know, figure out a way to go up the stairs every day and things of that nature. Like for me with the transportation system, I would take escalators. And when MTA would try to run me off the escalator, I'm like, well, fix the elevator or create an elevator. But until then, I'm not going to go around, you know, I want to go direct just like everyone else. Why do I have to, you know, I already have a disability. It already took me more to get ready today. And now you imposing another hardship on me to add more time. And the key to life, I think, is being to places on time most of the time. You could just show up and be good. You don't even have to do is, and you see it every day, like you know, throughout y'all work history. You know, there's people that just show up and still have a job. They don't have to do any real like work or anything like that. So, you know, with that said, that's like 70% of life. And I think in schools as well, like it should be no reason to be segregated. Unless it's, you know, real reasons where, you know, somebody might not be able to learn in a certain environment. Understandable. But I think it should be the person to make that decision, not the school.
Well, thank you for that. And this is definitely a much needed conversation.
Yep.
And I know we were supposed to just talk about adaptive sports, but you know
Yeah.
how things go.
Yeah, we adapt. We adapt.
Exactly. So I do want to thank everyone for joining us because we are just right at time. And I definitely want to thank you, Garrison, for, you know, participating in our Disability Awareness Month event. Garrison's employee reflection will be up soon, so please look out for that on our social media. He has also added how to connect with him in our chat, and I've also added the TED Talk. So again, please join us for the remainder of our events. Thank you all again for joining us. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. And with that said, have a wonderful day.
All right, take care, everybody. Thank you for having me.